I'm Nick Knudsen, joined by Will Miles. Welcome to Stand Up and Holler. On today's episode, it is magazine launch day. Will, it's been a crazy last month here. This is our first stand up in a holler in a couple stand up and holler in a couple weeks here. It's magazine launch day. We've been going at it, burning both ends of the candles on this here, and it's finally here. It's finally here.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're excited. I think it's funny. We were talking earlier this afternoon about last year's magazine. I was sort of flipping through and I was like, wow, last year's magazine was terrible compared to all the upgrades that we've made from last year to this year. I think the content's better than it ever has been before. We've got stuff where we're talking about why maybe there should be patience for Napier versus not having patience. There are some really cool breakdowns in terms of Graham Mertz, what he needs to do in 2024 to take the team forward, sort of comparing him to Brady Cook at Missouri. And then what does DJ Lagway bring to the table that Graham Mertz doesn't? And then a big section on Austin Armstrong and Ron Roberts and what they bring to the table. You did a lot of really cool stuff with the transfer portal, the 2024 signings, and sort of maps the same way you did last year. So I'm excited about the content. And I think people are going to learn something. I think you're going to look at this and say, "Hey, that gives me a new way of understanding sort of how things run." There's one specific section in there that talks about the defense, and there's a major outlier for last year's Florida defense that suggests Florida should be much better in 2024. So if you're one of those people who's like, "I'm not going to trust this team until the defense gets better," well, reason for hope there, and buy the magazine. You can check out why we think the defense is going to be better in 2024.
Yeah, and we're not trying to sell anyone to trust the team just yet. Make them earn it, right? They've got plenty of upgrades on this roster, though, and going through in detail, position by position. I'm more excited about the 2024 team than I was before we started the project. Will, I think this is definitely an improved roster. It's a deeper team than we've had in the last few years, and really looking forward to the season. The thing that I really liked about it, we did not concentrate heavily on all the we kind of had a mock in the beginning of bulletin board material, right? There's been plenty of bulletin board material throughout the offseason for these Gators, and we kind of addressed some of those issues throughout the magazine. So plenty of haterade, we're calling it. A little bit of haterade out there for the Gators. And we got some fun quotes that we tie into some different magazine articles throughout. But we didn't dwell on the same storylines that we've heard all off season, and we really focused on the analysis within the team. And I think it's a completely unique product that any Gator fan will enjoy. And Will, I like how Will has the tie in here. A great present for Father's Day.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my favorite part of the magazine probably is one I did. Obviously, I'm biased, but Trey Wilson is the guy who's the returner, the guy who's got to take the step forward this year at wide receiver. And we've got a big, like 8, 9, 10 page section on the different plays, the way Billy Napier got on the ball last year, and sort of building off of that, looking into the NFL and looking at other places in college football. What are ways that they can expand on that Trey Wilson package to make him even more dangerous? We saw that in the spring game a little bit with them going deep, but I think there's some things they can do with him. They spent a lot of time having him lined up in the backfield with Montrell Johnson as a lead blocker. That really makes the defense think, gets linebackers on the field when maybe you can get linebacker coverage, or gets a corner on the field. Now all of a sudden you can hand the ball off to Johnson. You've got an advantage in the running game. So that was a really cool section for me. But I think every year, I think the first year we did this, we had like 150 pages, and we looked back and we went, that was just too much. Like there were things in there that we wanted to cut, and last year we were a little bit more judicious in terms of what we took out. This year we were sitting there going, well, I want that in there too. Like, and there's some stuff that didn't make it that I think is really good stuff too. So very excited about the content and very excited to get this in people's hands.
Yeah, we don't have a problem filling up the pages. We have a problem deciding what's going to be in and what's not going to be in. And I think I think it has good flow to it. We do jump around from topic to topic within there, but I think it does have a good flow. And I like Will said, I really think you will learn something about this team going into the 2024 season. And Will, I wanted to give you credit for the Trey Wilson. He's our cover athlete, by the way. We got Trey Wilson on the cover. Great photo from Getty Images out there from the Georgia game last year, Trey Wilson. I wanted to give you some credit, but you beat me to it. You gave yourself credit. So it is a great section. It's a great section though, and we do this thing where we add the QR code where you can actually follow the play. And last year we had attached them to the videos that Will had pulled them from. This year we we're getting better every year, right? So we said, why are those videos not just standalone on our website? It's commercial free, so you just can pop in the QR code, follow along commercial free with each play, and watch and then read Will's analysis along with the play. I think it's one of the coolest things that we do year to year now in this magazine.
Yeah, if you like the stuff that we put up on readandreaction.com, you'll like those sections. If for no other reason, because we've paused those videos, we've pointed out the different guys on the field with circles or arrows or whatever it is to sort of hopefully give you something to follow along with. So, you're sitting there at the beach, you take out your phone, you scan in the QR code. Now you can see the video, you can see the routes that are actually drawn out on the page, and you can see the analysis, which then allows you to go, oh, okay. And the really cool part when I looked at the way Billy Napier uses Trey Wilson is that you could see them building more and more into the Trey Wilson package as the season progressed. So a lot of those pop passes that you saw, which was really the only way they were getting the ball real early in the year, by the time you got to the South Carolina Missouri games, there were a lot of creative ways that they were getting him the ball. And I think there's some stuff that they'll be able to use if they have a DJ Lagway package where Lagway's legs will become another threat combined with Eugene Wilson, but also just like I said earlier, being able to get the defense to not know what package to bring on the field and then using motion to make sure that he's open in a one-on-one situation where you can take advantage and actually go deep, because that is something we didn't see much last year, was getting Wilson back behind the defense. There were a lot of slants in front of the defense, screen passes, pop passes, tosses, those sorts of things. But how do you start getting them the ball deep? Those are things we definitely explore in the magazine, but it's in a way where we're building from how did Napier get him the ball in 2023 to how do we think he should get him the ball in 2024. And so obviously, if you see some of those things as the season goes on, we'd love for you to reach out to us.
Well, it's a massive project. It beats us up by the time we're done with it, but it's one of the most fun things we do throughout the year too. But one big part is I really do think this is our best product yet. I don't even think that's a question. I think it's undoubtedly our best product yet. But part of the reason we're getting better is because people are very good about reaching us out to us and tell us, I'd like to see this, or I'd like to see that, or what if we did from this angle? Give us feedback. We have that in the magazine too. It's right on the note from the founder page. Just email will@readandreaction.com. Let us know your thoughts, what you like, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see, what was missing. We try to do a little bit of a different approach on the preseason magazine. It's not your traditional preseason magazine, and let us know what hit and what you'd like to see from us next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that I think we've improved as well, beyond just the quality of the magazine, is the distribution a little bit. So this year you can buy it on Amazon if you want. So you go to Amazon, you type in 2024 Read and Reaction magazine, should pop right up. Like you said, you'll see Trey Wilson there on the cover. Florida versus the World is the title that we went into for this entire endeavor. You did a great job designing the cover. It looks like one of those old timey Sports Illustrated covers, and so you'll be able to find it there. Or if you go to readandreaction.com/mag. That's readandreaction.com/mag. There'll be a link to Amazon there, so you can go straight and buy it there. That's where you get the hard copy, but we're also selling a digital copy, a PDF copy as well. That's a little bit cheaper because we don't have to go through the Amazon distribution. So if you're interested in the content and you don't care about having a hard copy in your hands, you're just going to look at it on a tablet or something like that, you can save a couple of bucks, order it straight over there at readandreaction.com/mag, get the digital copy. If you want the hard copy in your hands, which, you talked about feedback, that was 2 years ago. We did a digital only version, and the only feedback we got was, "Hey guys, we like this, but we'd love to have it in our hands as a tangible physical magazine." And we've put that together now up on Amazon. So all you got to do is go order it. A couple days later, it'll be right in your mailbox, and you can be ready, like you said, for Father's Day. Because this is one of those cool things. Like, My dad has everything. I never know what to get him. This is the kind of thing that I would get my father. And so I'll let my mom buy it for my dad this time, but this is the kind of thing I'd get him. If for no other reason, just because it's something that you'd be able to talk with him about. So I'm sure there are people out there who struggle to find things to talk to their dad or their son-in-law or whoever, right, about specific things. Maybe you got Gator football in common though, and this we feel like is a really good gift for that sort of thing.
Yeah, my dad ordered 5 copies already, so I gotta go a different route. So thanks, Dad. Appreciate you, man. Thanks for the support.
Hey, I appreciate it. I got no problem with
Well, hey, like we said, you'll hear plenty about it from us the next few weeks, but it's available now. Go out and get your 2024 Read and Reaction Preseason Magazine today out on Amazon. If you got any questions, please feel free to hit us up. Looking forward to it. I got a link. I'll have a link in the show notes as well for people. So, all right, let's dive in, Will. Jason Zandamela coming here to Florida, the number one interior offensive line prospect in the class of 2024. He was the number 4 offensive lineman overall. He's out of Clearwater. Uh, Went out to USC for a minute. I think I know some people who have been on longer vacations than Zandamela spent at the time he spent at USC, but it's good to have a kid from Florida, from the west coast of Florida, coming back home. And man, I think this has the potential to be one of the best pickups I feel like during the Napier era. Very strong pickup at a position that we can use high level prospects at. Will, we have not been a school that has brought in a ton of high level interior offensive line players over the years from high school recruiting. I know obviously Osiris Torrance is a very nice pickup in the portal, but it's been kind of a development position at Florida for the last several years, and I feel like this guy's coming in top notch pedigree, number 1 prospect in the country this past year. Very excited to see him in orange and blue.
Yeah, I mean it's the new world, right? With the transfer portal, where you commit to one place and 3 months later you're off to another location. Obviously, we'll talk about a cornerback, but in the not too distant
Hey,
future here,
he made us wait, so we'll make him wait to
we'll
talk
make him
about
wait too.
it.
So Zandamel is interesting. If you look at his 24/7 rating, he's 46th. If you look at his 24/7 composite, he's 126th, fourth ranked interior offensive line. So there's some disagreement about how good he is overall. Certainly a blue chip prospect, an interior offensive lineman, like you mentioned. That does mean that from a size and just sort of physical skills perspective, you're not getting a left tackle, and there is more value in tackles than there is in guards. 6'3", 285, but he knows who he is, being an interior offensive lineman. It's actually interesting. Florida has gone after guys who are just huge on the
Mhm.
offensive line. I remember you and I were talking with Clark Brooks from SEC StatCat maybe 2 or 3 months ago, and he was sort of commenting to us that one of the curious things about Florida's offensive line recruiting is that they've been bringing in really big guys, which isn't necessarily something that you think of when you think of the zone blocking schemes that Billy Napier tries to run. So this is actually more in line with those guys that when you think of like the Shanahan
The old Denver
Broncos
Broncos, right?
and
Right.
even the Shanahan 49ers,
Yeah.
where they're working on misdirection and really having sort of the smaller offensive linemen who allow the cutback lanes and are able to get out into the zones. This is a guy who sort of fits that profile and maybe can help move that forward. Now, as far as 2024 is concerned, I don't know that you're going to see a giant impact. In fact, if you see a lot of Zandamela on the field, that probably bodes poorly for Florida up front on the offensive line. But certainly Florida, given where the 2024 class was originally, and now some of the additions that they've made, and look, I'm never going to complain about a top 100 guy in the offensive line. I think one of the places where Florida has just woefully underperformed is recruiting on the
But
offensive line for like a decade now. And
but
so, hey, brought in a good guy, and don't look a gift horse in the mouth.
isn't it nice to not need him to have to jump right in right away, right?
Sure.
Isn't that how it's supposed to be at
Well, the
Florida?
other thing
That
that's
we
nice
don't
is
immediately need some emergency freshmen to plug in to have a viable offensive line. That's how it's supposed to be, right? I think that's a great sign that things are headed in the right direction along the offensive front.
yeah. Well, I mean, look, I think we're going to find out a lot this year about the Florida Gators, and a lot of that is going to be. There's certainly been a drive towards a cultural shift in Gainesville. Napier's got his own guys in now, and it's not easy sledding with the schedule, but he's got his own guys in now. And so we should be able to see the fruits of that or the downsides to that, depending upon your general belief. And look, Billy Napier has not recruited well enough over the last 3 years to win national championships, but he's recruited well enough to go 9-3. And because of the schedule, I think we all sort of wonder whether we're going to get there. But the talent level at Florida is pretty up there at this point. Some of it's young, some of it's inexperienced, but we got a lot of experience last year. And if like I said, if Zandamela has to jump in right away, that's probably a problem. But he shouldn't have to jump in right away because guys like Najee Harris and Roderick Kearney and those sorts of things, guys who were young last year, should be competing for those sorts of spots. And Zandamela fills that role right behind to jump in as those guys develop and eventually lead the program.
Well, big pickup along the offensive line for the Gators. Let's move on to talk about the transfer who really shook up Gator Twitter. I was surprised a little bit here, Will, at how quickly people have just done a 180 with the Cormani McClain situation. Uh, Expected to commit to Florida. Let's go back to October 2022. Top rated recruit out of the state from the defensive backfield here. Lakeland corner. Expected to commit to Florida, surprises everyone, commits to Miami. And really, Will, you see all these like videos that have been made up and everyone's dropping their articles they wrote from the time. The fact that it was so solidly Florida, I think that's something that I remember at the time, but as time went by, it's interesting to kind of relive that moment with some of these tweets and some of the things you're seeing in the last few days. But he ends up surprising everyone, committing to Miami at the last minute, leaves Miami at the altar at the very last minute, declines to sign on signing day in December, stretches it out, ends up getting into the Dion vortex out in Colorado, and it didn't go so well out in Boulder. He had a rough year out there. Didn't seem to click with Dion very well. There was one point during the fall where Dion said he need study, prepare, be on time for meetings, show up to the darn meetings, understand what we do as a scheme, want to play this game, desire to play this game. That's what he laid out for Cormani McClain to play a little more at Colorado. He did see the field a little bit. He got in over the course of 8 games, but you saw some of the concerns crop up about his size, maybe throughout the season, and obviously the work habits. A lot of questions around that from the Colorado side of things. Here's what Sanders told DNVR buffs about McClain moving on from Colorado. I pray to God that he goes to a program that challenges him as well as holds him accountable and develops him as a young man, Sanders said. Unfortunately, we weren't the program that could accomplish that. So it seems like some level of personality conflict based on some comments McClain made afterward on the way out. He said he made a video on YouTube, ironically, or I don't know if it was Twitch or whatever. I saw it on YouTube, but he's not playing for clicks. He don't want to play for clicks. So he ends up hitting the transfer portal, and after some time, ends up at Florida as what we now know as a preferred walk on. So that to me, Will, is the icing on the cake to make this. It's a good bet anyway, even if he was getting a scholarship. But the fact that they got him to come here as a preferred walk on is just, it's a no risk bet. It's a great bet, and I think a lot of Gator Nation was fired up about that move.
Well, I mean, if you ever needed another plug for the magazine, this is one that you should or one I should throw out there. Is last year I wrote an article in our preseason magazine that talked about an edge that you could gain by having guys take NIL deals as preferred walk-ons so that they didn't take scholarships, so that you could exceed the 85 scholarship limit.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out Florida's doing that, at least when it comes to McClain. In many ways, it's brilliant because tuition isn't that expensive. You can cover it with whatever name, image, and likeness dollars that he gets, and you don't have to use the scholarship in order to do that. But more than anything, I think the real value here is this isn't a 2024 move. This is a 2025 and a 2026 move, mainly because if you think about this year's secondary, it's pretty much set. I mean, you're going to have Asa Turner or DJ Douglas at one safety position. You're going to have Jordan Castell at the other safety position. You're going to have Jason Marshall at corner. You're going to have Devin Moore at corner. And then you've got Jakeem Jackson and Sharif Denson and Dijon Johnson, all guys who got snaps last year. That's who Cormani McClain's going to be competing with. And the question is going to be, is one of those guys going to step in at the star, or is a guy like Charquez Bridges gonna be safety, star, sort of, are they going to basically go three safeties, two corners, or three corners, two safeties? Will be the question that I think people ask. And Bridges was a corner at Oregon, but played a bunch of safety in the spring game. So I kind of suspect that him and Jackson are going to be the ones battling for that slot or star corner. McClain's more of an outside guy. So he's really competing with Moore and Marshall. So in some ways, it's insurance for Devin Moore, who hasn't been able to stay healthy. But the big thing is, if Moore stays healthy, you got DJ Douglas, Asa Turner, Triquez Bridges, RJ Moten, Jason Marshall, and then Devin Moore, because if he plays well, he's going to go to the pros. That's six guys who are all leaving after this year to go to the NFL, or at least they're done with their eligibility. And that's when you're going to need the guys like Jameer Grimsley, Greg Smith, Josiah Davis, Teddy Foster, and Cormani McClain to step in and be that next wave of guys. So, we talk about recruiting all the time is about stacking talent, because sometimes even the most talented guys don't work out. McClain played 277 snaps last year. His PFF rating was 51.7. Jakeem Jackson played 113 snaps. His PFF rating was 55.4. So if you think Jakeem Jackson showed some flashes last year, but was inconsistent, that's essentially what you got with your true freshman season for Cormani McClain. Now, Cormani was 13th overall in the recruiting rankings. Jakeem Jackson was 55th. So, again, should you expect more from the five-star guy? Maybe. But, I wrote an article about this recently where it was basically looking at guys from their freshman year to their sophomore year to their junior year, and pretty consistently you were getting it, and these were top 100 corners, and pretty consistently you were getting at least average cornerback play by the time those guys were juniors from top 100 recruits who played all the way through their junior season. So if McClain plays over the next couple of years, next year we should expect him to at least be average at corner. Now maybe he turns into a star, and if he turns into a star, it's a massive home run. And if he turns into a headache, he's a preferred walk-on. Just stop the NIL dollars and he goes someplace else. So like you said, it's a no-risk proposition, but the reward is so enormous. And, I know we talked about this when Jameer Grimsley committed after Nick Saban left and Grimsley comes back to Florida, essentially flips. He's considered a transfer, but he's from the 2024 class. It's the same thing really with Cormani McClain, is that the staff maintained a relationship with the guy even after the whole flip scenario where the fans got bitter, but he maintained a relationship with the team to a point where he was able to come back and potentially contribute. So that's a big part in the transfer portal now, is just because somebody leaves you at the altar doesn't mean you're not going to get married. That you might just have to wait a year to get married for some of these guys. And certainly the fact that these guys who are all flipping to Florida are Florida guys, I think is significant. We've talked extensively about having Florida guys in Napier's program, and that's starting to build pretty significantly now.
Yeah, and hey, if these guys work out, hopefully the Florida guys don't even leave Florida in the first place. We can get back to that way of living at some point. But
Win 9 games and it won't be a problem.
hey, great opportunity though for the Gators here. That the red flags for me, Will. He had plenty of opportunity to shine out in Colorado, I feel like, and if Sanders is crushing the preparation angle with him studying and preparing, understanding the defense, hopefully that type of thing, hopefully that gets under control in Gainesville. So I'll tell you what though, little nod to Will Harris so far. What, like, you just read off all those names, and it's like when you layer the freshman class on top of the guys that are already in the building and take those transfers. First off, multiple notes here. The transfers, Cormati and Zandamela, icing on the cake as far as this transfer class goes in 2024. What a difference this year from more of a prospect heavy class in 23. The Gators seem to have some real contributors here in this 2024 transfer class. High level guys though that will get the fan base fired up. I think it's been an outstanding job in the transfer class, but an outstanding job as well with Will Harris stepping in for Corey Raymond.
Yeah, well, so I have an article going up on Read and Reaction right now that looks at the on-off numbers for all of Florida's starters on defense last year. So, Sports Info Solutions has graciously given us access to some of their data. And when you look at the on-off numbers, every single guy except for Jason Marshall in the secondary, what the defense was better when they were off the field. So Jaden Hill, Miguel Mitchell, Jordan Castell, though that one was pretty much even, and then Jalen Kimber. And Kimber and Hill and Mitchell were pretty significantly, the defense was better when they were off the field. And so we've now replaced those guys with Devin Moore, Asa Turner, potentially Sharif Denson. You've got DJ Douglas, those guys, the guys they brought in through the transfer portal. Same thing when you think about linebacker, where Scooby Williams and Manny Nunnery, the defense was worse when those guys were off or the defense was better when those guys were off the field. Well, now you got Pup Howard, who even in limited time at South Carolina, the defense was better. Shamar James coming back fully from injury, and Derek Wingo actually had really good statistics in terms of on and off numbers. So I'm really encouraged. You start looking at last year. There were three guys where the defense was actually worse when they were off the field for the entire defense.
Mhm.
And if we get the same performance from those transfers I just mentioned that we had last year in terms of on off, well, now you'll have 8 guys on defense where the starters perform better than the backups. And you might even get more than that. And, I made a comment on Twitter the other day about how you win now in college football by having defensive back play. And it's pretty clear in the numbers that's where it comes from. And the feedback I got from most people was, yeah, well, but that's also a function of defensive line play. And you're absolutely right. I mean, those things are symbiotic. But I think that's sort of what we see in these numbers is that Florida is going to be at least average at each of these positions. And so there's not going to be an excuse for the corners anymore. Like Jason Marshall, the EPA per play was actually positive, and the lower the number, the better for EPA per play. The EPA per play was 0.03 when Marshall was on the field, but it was 0.18 when he was off the field. So as much as people complain about Jason Marshall was a reason that the defense was holding together. And when they brought in guys, when Marshall had to sit, the defense was even worse. So, oftentimes you hear people go, oh, like just it can't be any worse if you put somebody in, if you put the backup in. That was not the case last year, at least not at the cornerback position. And Devin Moore, when he could stay healthy, was the best player on the defense last year. So I'm excited to see him go. So anyway, I think it's I have a lot of optimism. You mentioned when we were talking about the magazine, but even as we talk about some of these recruits who are coming in, these guys are depth pieces for 2024. They're not integral pieces for 2024. And I think that's, you mentioned it earlier, that's really nice that they sort of filled out the transfer portal early on with the guys who were plug and play. And now they're bringing in guys who are developmental guys who hopefully will push. And look, if a guy like McClain ends up playing in the starting lineup, then that means he earned it over a really good player. And it means he's doing all the things that people might have some concerns about. And so if he wins one of the jobs, great, because that means Florida's defense is going to be even better.
Hey, look, I one of the stats from the magazine that I had thrown out there, 82% of the roster is Billy Napier's. No. This is we are full force in the Billy Napier era at this point here. 82% of the roster comes from Billy Napier. Really liking the depth at some of these positions. The defensive back room is one that they did a great job addressing this offseason. Looking forward to see how that plays out next year. Will, let's kick over to the offensive side of the ball here. Elijhah Badger, wide receiver from Arizona State in the transfer portal. Sound familiar? Ricky Pearsall there. 65 receptions last season, 713 yards and 3 touchdowns. Sounds like an okay stat sheet there, Will, but you go back to 2022, the man had 70 receptions and 7 touchdowns. So he was over 800 yards as well. So he has been a vital piece of the Arizona State offense for the last couple of seasons. I know Arizona State's been going through some turmoil here in the post Herm Edwards era. By the way, how many great players were on those Herm Edwards offenses? You go through the Jaden Daniels, Ricky
How are they so
Pearsall,
bad?
like it's unbelievable some of the
You
plays
play
that
to
have
win the
come out.
game.
But yeah, hey, Arizona State, come on, send us another, man. Send us another. Great wide receiver though. He's got a lot of speed. He's very like there's great catch he had. His highlight play of the year was he had a solid catch on an out route in the end zone, one handed grab in the corner there. But he's got the frame too. He's 6'2", and he just really brings a different element to the wide receiver core that we don't quite have yet.
Yeah, well, we've been asking all offseason who's going to step in for Ricky Pearsall, and the answer has been, well, I hope Trey Wilson's even better. And it's like, well, one of the reasons Trey Wilson was good is because Ricky Pearsall was on the other side and could keep the defense honest. The interesting thing is that Pearsall last year, his Pro Football Focus rating was 77.2, which is well above average. Average for wide receivers is somewhere in the 68 range. So Pearsall, very, very good. Obviously, I think the NFL valued a lot of his traits. 77.2 for Pro Football Focus. So Badger in 2023, 572 total snaps, 76.7 was his Pro Football Focus rating. And in 2022, 650 snaps, 76.1 was his Pro Football Focus rating. So you are replacing, assuming he can replicate the 2022 or 2023 performance from a snaps perspective and just a general, are you doing your job? Because that's what the Pro Football Focus ratings are supposed to measure. You're getting exactly what you lost in Ricky Pearsall last year, which means you don't need Shamir Dike to be Ricky Pearsall. You need Shamir Dike to be a good third option behind Trey Wilson and Elijhah Badger. And so this really does reset the wide receiver room where we're not sitting there going, well, if Aiden Mizell can step up, or if Andy Jean can step up, or if Khalil Jackson can step up, or if Marcus Burke can step up. Now this is the staff targeted a guy that they thought could be a replacement for a guy that they already lost. And again, there's no excuse now, right? I mean, the offensive line has been rebuilt. Graham Mertz had a good year last year. They've been talking about him pushing the ball downfield. We talked about that a lot in the preseason magazine and how he can do that, and maybe some ways where, how can he correct that last year his average depth of target wasn't very far downfield. We talked extensively about Trey Wilson being valuable in the role he was in last year. Bringing in Badger allows you to keep Wilson in that role. It allows you to replace Pearsall in some respects, and it allows you to allow DK or whoever else to be a third option rather than having to shoehorn them into a second option. This might be the biggest addition that Florida has for the 2024 season in terms of opening things up. So very significant ad, very happy to have a guy like Badger in the fold.
Yeah, and that doesn't even mention the tight end room with Boardingham. I mean, Boardingham did most of his damage in a 5-game stretch too, where he got going more of the back half of the season before he missed some time there. But he's a fantastic option in the passing game too. So you add Badger to that mix. Again, this looks like better team than what we saw last year in a lot of ways. So,
Yeah.
uh, overall thoughts on the transfer portal now that we've reached the end of this transfer cycle?
I mean, I think it's still band-aids over bullet holes. I think, again, not to beat a dead horse, but we've got a piece in the magazine talking specifically about, has the transfer portal reduced the importance of high school recruiting? And the answer is no. Actually, the correlation between winning and high school recruiting has only gotten stronger over the last 4 years since the transfer portal has become a larger part of the college football landscape. But we also have limited data. And I think obviously the transfer portal this year is crazier than it was last year, crazier than it was the year before. So I think that data is going to start to stabilize, and teams are going to be able to find guys who can help them win. And really it's a function of when you miss at a specific position, you've got the opportunity to bring in someone who isn't necessarily a star, but somebody who is able to give you replacement level play at that position. So baseball, one of my favorite stats in baseball is wins above replacement. And the idea is, how many wins does this player give you above just a general AAA player? And if you take a general AAA player and played a AAA team against a bunch of major league teams, I think you'd win like something like 40 games or 45 games. And so the principle is that a good player has 2 wins above replacement. And if you just pepper the entire team with guys who have 2 wins above replacement or 3 wins above replacement, you can get the 40 to 45 games you need to get into the playoffs. And I think football you don't necessarily think of it that way, but with the transfer portal, you can now, where you go, we don't need Elijhah Badger to be Malik Neighbors. What we need is Elijhah Badger to be exactly what Elijhah Badger's been the last couple of years, which is a very good wide receiver who has a future in the NFL, but he's not a first round draft pick, I don't think. Now, if he comes in and he outperforms, well, now all of a sudden you're talking about a guy who can find his way in Pearsall's range in the NFL draft next year. But you don't necessarily have to have that. It's the same thing with Princely Human leaving. This isn't actually a transfer portal aspect, but Human leaves and Justice Boone comes back. If Boone plays in 2024 like he did in 2022, Florida got an upgrade at defensive end. Now he's got to play like he did in 2022. He also had limited snaps in 2022, so there is some sample size questions there. But if he puts up the exact same type of rate statistics that he put up in 2022, Florida gets an upgrade at defensive end. So they didn't necessarily have to go to the transfer portal to upgrade that defensive end position, but having that depth piece, having Justice Boone makes a difference. So that to me is the big lesson for the transfer portal. If you can bring in a quarterback who can be a game changer, like a Michael Penix, like a Joe Burrow, obviously that's a no-brainer. But Florida over the last couple of years has brought in a quarterback who stabilized the position in Graham Mertz. They brought in Ricky Pearsall, who ended up being a first-round draft pick. They brought in Osiris Torrance, who was an All-American offensive guard. And now they brought in some guys this year to hopefully stabilize the entire defense, and then DK and Badger at wide receiver to really increase the numbers and the competition in that room. Is it enough to win the SEC? Probably not. But this is one of the things about the 2024 season and the 2025 season as well, is Florida's schedule so difficult that if they can pull out a couple of close wins and I think a 9-3 team with this schedule makes
Oh,
the 12-team playoff no problem.
100% a playoff team. Yeah.
And I mean, I think you could make an argument at 8-4.
Yeah.
It would depend on the 4 losses, who it's to, how the losses occurred, and those
Tough.
sorts of things. But even then, I think you can make an argument, and these guys get them closer to that level. But that's really what I'm curious to see in 2024 is Florida has taken a bunch of the holes that they had, and they have raised those holes to sort of average level play. I don't know if they have a ton of superstars. So that's going to be where Lagway or a guy like LJ McCray, if LJ McCray can come in and put up 8 or 9 sacks just as a situational pass rusher and start putting the fear of God into left tackles and right tackles in the SEC, well, now that changes the entire complexion of the defense because you've got a bunch of solid guys and a star. And that's really what I see missing on the Florida defense. And then if Trey Wilson can take a jump up, because right now that's the thing I see missing on the Florida offense is there's not just like a star.
Mm-hmm.
And so, those two things, if they can add that, I think, I'm not predicting Florida's going to go 9-3, but there is a path, and these transfers have really opened up that path. Whereas when we looked at the roster coming out of the season last year after the loss to Florida State, we're like, there's a lot of stuff to fill. And I think they've filled those spots pretty well.
A lot of good news, Will. A lot of good news, man. Maybe we should take another 3-week break or something at some point.
People were complaining I was negative the entire time for the last like 3 or 4 of these stand up and hollers we've done. And, and mainly because by the time you get to February and March, the only thing you can talk about is what's Napier got to do to save his job. And that at some point becomes adversarial regardless. I think there's been a lot of good things that they've done. I still think the cocktail party is going to be a rough one. I still think the game against Texas is going to be a rough one. There's going to be some rough patches in 2024, no doubt. But I think if they can show that the operational things are being improved, if the special teams gaffes go away, if they can get better field positions. So you think that's one of the things that Badger brings is experience on special teams that should help as well. Obviously, the Georgia Bulldog, who shall not be named, was somebody who returned kickoffs last year, and hopefully we get an upgrade on that one.
Running back.
Well, that is true.
Put your backup running back there to return a couple kickoffs. Well, speaking of this, some of the games this season here, Will, we got a couple game times announced. All 3:30. All on ABC, not CBS. Get used to that, man. Gonna miss that song, but I guess they'll keep it for the Big Ten. But That just feels SEC to me. So it's weird. It's weird seeing ABC here, but home opener against Miami, 3:30 in the Swamp. The SEC opener against A&M, 3:30 in the Swamp. When do you see 3:30 games in September in the Swamp? Will it's been heavily skewed toward those 7 p.m. kickoffs in September. The last at least the last decade here, man. It's been a long time since we do afternoon games in September, but got a couple of big ones early in the Swamp, and then of course Georgia's always 3:30. That was announced as well in Jacksonville. But love that love that time slot in the Swamp anyway. I know it's going to be a miserable one to sit through in the crowd, but hopefully Miami and A&M are just as miserable. Although I think they're both pretty comfortable with the heat, both of those schools.
Yeah, well, as a quasi media member, I approve of the 3:30 starts because the 7 o'clock starts mean that I don't sleep. So those are always helpful. The noon starts are terrible because that means nothing's going well and everybody's in a miserable mood. But the 3:30 games mean that your team's relevant and people care. Obviously, you think about it being 3:30 and it's somewhat of an advantage for Florida just because of the way the sun goes down. They will be in the shade while Miami's sitting in the heat. But those guys have been practicing in South Florida all off season. I don't think that the heat is necessarily going to affect them that much. I think the question is going to be, Cam Ward and Cam Ward versus Graham Mertz, and you take those two and you put them next to each other and you take their weapons and look, I mean, Miami wasn't a bad team last year, but they weren't great. And one of the things I think I sent it your way was if you look at Cam Ward's stats over the last couple of years, they look remarkably like Van Dyke's stats at Miami the last couple of years. So is he an upgrade? And is he an upgrade when you're in a place like the Swamp that's going to be rocking and rolling there? Because once you get a little bit sweaty, you may as well get completely just sweaty and go crazy. And I'm sure the Florida fans will. So it's cool to have this rivalry back. I like Florida Miami playing. I know that the schedule is rough this year and next year, but getting to play the Hurricanes is awesome. And now we get a true state champion the next couple of years, right? I mean, there's going to be Florida plays Florida State, Miami plays Florida State, and Florida plays Miami. So we've got the round robin and we get to actually have state bragging rights, which is important because let's win those games and then take advantage of it on the recruiting trail.
I like their off schedule. I'm good with it. Like, what are we supposed to do? Play like if Florida is who Florida is supposed to be. This is great. This is a
Yeah,
great schedule. So
well,
I mean,
Doring the other day said he never liked playing directional schools. I think
yeah,
on Crane and Company. He was on Crane and Company, and he said that he never liked playing the directional schools when he was there. So, I think the players get up for it. It's more a question of, to me, the SEC schedule has never been about one team. It's always been about the attrition. Even you think about the Florida 2008 national championship team, that Ole Miss team they lost to was clearly inferior to that team. And
mhm.
9 times out of 10, Florida just waxes that Ole Miss team. But it turns out that it's really hard to get emotionally up for game after game after game after game when you're as good as that Florida team is. And even when you're not, it's sometimes hard to get up for it game after game. You just happen to lose more of those games. Florida was able to hold on to all of them except for that Ole Miss one. But those are the things, right? I mean, there were a couple of times in the Swamp, in the Spurrier era, and maybe even in the Urban Meyer era. I think more Spurrier when Mississippi State got them. And, you sort of look at those sorts of games and go, how could that happen? But it happens because of the way the schedule sets up. So in some ways, that actually might be an advantage because the tough part of Florida's schedule is just back to back to back to back to back. And it's towards the back end. So maybe you get that momentum early on before sort of the fatigue sets in. And maybe the fatigue sets in one of those games against a team that you probably weren't going to win anyway, even if you came in and played fantastic and, make the best of it.
Well, little insight into 2024. And now that the magazine's delivered and it's up on Amazon, go out and order your copy today. Countdown's officially on. The countdown's officially on. You can get a preseason magazine in your hands if you order it today. Very soon. Will, any final announcements here?
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, like 3 years ago, we launched this preseason magazine. We weren't sure whether it was going to be successful. And a lot of you folks have supported us, have given us feedback, and have made us believe that it can be. I think I made Nick choke on his tongue a couple of months ago when we announced that we were going to try to expand beyond Florida. And that's really what this is about. We are really proud of this product. We're proud of the content. We're proud of the way it looks. We're proud that you can get it on Amazon. We've gone through all the hoops that are necessary to get something up there on a distribution where you control when it's ordered to you, where it's not me stuffing it in my table. So we've gone through a bunch of different iterations to get here. And if you like what we do, this is a way to support us. And so we're very appreciative. We think you're going to get your money's worth when you order it, but we also appreciate that you're supporting us, supporting our dream of turning this into something where, next year, hopefully there's a Georgia and a Florida State and a Miami and an Alabama preview from the Read and Reaction brand that's out there, and we can expand beyond what we're doing at Florida right now. So this is sort of the first foray into that. And, we're really excited to see where it goes, and we're really appreciative and humbled by all the people who've helped us along the way. So thank you so much before you've even ordered it. And now go order it. Like I said, Amazon.com, search 2024 Read and Reaction magazine. Or if you just go to readandreaction.com/mag, there are links to get to Amazon to buy the hard copy. And then there are also links to go to our specific selling interface where you can buy a digital PDF version. And the PDF version is a little bit cheaper than the hard copy, obviously, because of the printing costs and those sorts of things. So depending upon which one you prefer, go check those out. And I am very confident that if you buy this thing, you'll be pleased that you did, that it's worth the money, and hopefully worth the relationship that you get out of it too. Because like we said earlier, as a Father's Day gift, as a way to connect, I think this is college football itself does that, and that is our hope with the magazine, is that would help facilitate that as well. So thank you everybody for ordering. We appreciate it. Appreciate you dealing with us, plugging it as we're going to do here and in the future. But like I said, we're really proud of it, and we hope that you'll get as much value and have as much fun reading it as we did writing it and putting it together, and thinking about you as the fan as we put it together.
Enjoy the magazine, everybody. Have a great week. Go Gators.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening to Stand Up and Holler. If you're interested in more information from me and Nick, you can go over to readandreaction.com. You can like and subscribe our YouTube channel here at Read and Reaction, or you can go to patreon.com/readandreaction to support us, get extra information, and we do Ask Anythings over there every once in a while as well. So check us out. Thanks for listening.